What's up, y'all? It is getting dark. Yes, I know. So, uh, today I'm doing a second video. Okay, same day as the last one. This one is gonna be in the series, the Ubermensch series. Even though my topic today is gonna be natural selection. Okay, and it's because and if you go back and watch that last video, the Ubermensch video, I gave characteristics of what I considered to be the Superman. And so go back and watch it so you kind of get a definition where I'm going with this. But today we're going to talk about one piece of it, which is natural selection. Why natural selection? Because in order for man to evolve, we're right in the middle of an evolutionary process. Man, evolution never stops. If we evolved from apes and we evolved from Neanderthals and Cro-Magnons and prehistoric man or primitive man, then it means that we're still evolving. And if you look at the skeletal remains of a man who lived 10,000 years ago, he is pretty much the same man that we have today. Why are we so different than the men back then? How did we evolve? Did we get bigger hands, faster feet? What? If you look at the skeleton, we were the same. The difference was this, the brain. Our brains were the same size as they were 50, 60,000 years ago. And if you look at the amount of time that man's been on this planet, let's say about 100,000 years, I don't really know what, I'm not an anthropologist or whatever, but in about 100,000 years, we lived pretty much the same. We went from hunter-gatherers, we learned a little bit of agriculture, things like that. But we didn't really become what they would call modern man until about maybe 3,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, when we started to build architecture and create music and, art. That was pretty much how we judged the evolution of man. We went from being almost animal-like to being human-like with creativity. And that's what defines men from primitive man to modern man. At what point did man start to create things where we can say he's a modern man? And that is about 5,000 years ago. Maybe, well, it depends on whose version you take. Between 3 to 5,000 years ago. That's not that long ago. You know what I'm saying? Now, of course, if you want to get into like Kemet, Egypt, they were saying that the pyramids were built about 10,000 years ago. Okay, that's you can argue that. Okay, but if you look at the amount of time that humans have been on this planet, that's a really long time. And if you want to talk about other versions of humans, like the Neanderthals, the Cro-Magnons, stuff like that, it's even longer, maybe million of years ago. But we're just talking about right now. I'm just talking about the Homo sapiens. That's me and you. As much as we like to call white boys Neanderthals, they're really not Neanderthals. They might be like 2% Neanderthals, something like that. But Europeans are pretty much the same thing we are. Okay, no matter where you go on the planet, we're all part of this same species of Homo sapien. And what got us to where we are today, if you look at the time we were here on the planet, which is, I'll say, about 100,000 years, for about this much, we lived in primitive conditions. And then for about that much, which is only like 5,000 years, 3 to 5,000 years, we produced architecture. We practiced religion. We had written languages. We painted. We made music. That was kind of the point where we consider ourselves to have become modern men. And the difference was all up here. It was a mental, a psychological evolution. Do you follow me? It wasn't a physical evolution. It's not like we had hair all over our bodies and stuff, 20,000 years ago. No, we pretty much look the same way. Okay? So, in order for us to develop those brains, we had to have longer periods of protection, longer periods of incubation as children. So, unlike let's say monkeys who give birth, and within a week the monkey baby's already crawling, climbing the trees and jumping from branch to branch and stuff like that. We took longer than a week, right? We needed a couple years. And then if you really look at it, we probably weren't very independent where we could feed ourselves until we were maybe 6, 7 years old, depending on what culture you grew up in. So that meant that our women had to be in an environment where she could nurture her children, where she can protect her children, she could feed and teach her children, and the woman could not be out there hunting animals and fighting off invaders and protect her children. So what that meant was women had to choose a mate that could give her that environment to provide for her children. And it's still that way today. Women need, in order to have successful children, the women need to be able to teach, to feed, to shelter, to protect her children, to nurture them along until they reach a point where they're independent. And like I said, depending on the culture that you're in, that could be 13 years, that could be 18 years, whatever. And there are 2 levels of incubation, 2 levels of protection in raising a child. The first level, of course, is the mother who protects, feeds, clothes, shelters her child, teaches her child, gets him healthy, makes sure that he lives long enough to become an adult. And then as an older child or younger adult, it is the community. It is the community of families. That's one of the things about human beings, that we are communal, and that's why they say like the apes are like us, because you don't see one ape and his family off by himself. You always see a group of apes together, right? And no matter what animal species we're looking at, it is the strongest males that are allowed to mate. So what that means is there's a percentage of males in the animal kingdom that will never produce an offspring. And this is how animals evolve and get stronger. Got it? Okay. So, but it's the same thing for human beings. And, in ancient prehistoric times, the men, if a man was born, let's say, with one leg, or with no arms or something like that, if he survived childhood, the chances that he would find a wife and produce children are very, very slim. If a man was weak or sickly, the chances that he found a wife and produced children were very, very slim. And it is because women were in an environment where they needed to provide for their families, for their children, and women, matter of fact, females of all species, not just humans, gravitate towards the strongest men. The strongest males who can provide and protect. The wisest ones were the ones who got to procreate. What happened for the human is that technology allowed us to live under the illusion that we're strong males. And so because of technology, because we're able to make treaties with neighboring kingdoms and, reduce the chances of war, and, we learned about our environment through learning sciences and learning about health and learning about diseases and things like that, more of us were able to procreate. And what's the result is there were more chances for weak men to have offspring. And so what happens is, in modern times, we have men today who are dishonest. We have men who have no control over their sexual urges. We have men who are lazy, who don't know how to work or won't work. We have men who are extremely violent, men who are not very intelligent. They are able to find women, and they're able to compensate for some of those weaknesses and appear strong enough to get women. We have women who don't understand the need for a strong man. Maybe they're reproducing at an earlier age and they're not being taught or something like that. And they're choosing men based on superficial things, right? Instead of things that matter. And so what you end up with, and that's a matter of fact, in the black community, that natural selection will explain exactly why we're in the position that we're in today. Can you imagine a brother with no job, a brother who's lazy, a brother who's criminal, a brother who doesn't know how to treat women? Can you imagine a guy like that in the 1950s, and during the time of Dr. King and Malcolm X, somebody like that keeping a family and producing children, right? Of course, I mean, there were men that were like that, but they didn't stay married for very long when they were weak like that. You see what I'm saying? But we're able to do that today. Why? Because of technology. Well, we have welfare that'll feed the kids if the brother's too lazy. We have, we have schools that'll teach the children, and you can preoccupy a child from age 5 to age 18, where a man is almost not needed. And you have the illusion that these children are being raised. All they have to do is be just smart enough to make it to the next grade. And you've raised a child from age 5 all the way to 18 when you really haven't raised shit. You just fed him, gave him a place to live. And when he turned 18, boom, he's off on his own. But what happened to the weak man's child? The weak man's child very often grew up to become a weak man himself, or weak girl himself. Do you see where I'm getting at? And so you can only, if a mother is not able to properly protect and teach her child, then the mother ends up raising a weak child. And that weak child becomes a weak adult. And so you end up with men and women who were raised to become dependent on the system. Men and women who were raised to not know how to manage a family and things like that. Because if the man of that family was not there to support that woman, the woman had to balance survival with motherhood. And now we have a woman who spends 8 hours a day fighting as a wage slave instead of protecting and teaching her children. And there is a difference between raising children and maintaining children. You maintain a dog by putting a bowl of food out there every day and taking him to the vet when he's sick and things like that. But it is possible to maintain a dog for his lifetime and not teach that dog shit. Never have trained that dog, never have loved that dog, never had taken care of that dog. And then you do the same thing with children. Give that child a place to live, tell him you love him once a day, you feed him, you clothe him, give him baths, things like that. You teach him what little bit you could during the time that you get off of work and the time you go to bed, which is usually like 3 hours, 4 hours a day. You haven't really raised that child. And this is how you end up with teenagers, young adults, doing shit that the mom and dad have no idea that they were doing it, who had children who were being molested all their lives, and you didn't know because you weren't there with that child. And so when a man is a weak man, he leaves his woman to try to do his job and her job, resulting in those children growing up to become weak adults. And technology, of course, is to blame for this. And so um, uh, there is the illusion that I succeeded. My kid is 18 years old. He graduated high school, and you feel like you were successful. But if that child does not grow up and is not an improvement from the last generation, you are not successful. I'm sorry. You are not successful. And this is why families that battle in court do not raise stronger children. They don't. The next group of children are not successful, more successful than the parents, right? All we did was maintain them, feed, clothe, and take care of them when they're sick, and then push them out the door when they're 18, unprepared for life. So, I said all that to say this, that when a man is a weak man, he ends up not knowing, he has the illusion that he's a strong man, especially if mom loved the hell out of him, treated him, told him you were handsome and you were a good man and blah, 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 blah. You know, there's a joke that I say all the time, and I'm pretty sure you might have heard it. Behind every shitty ass brother, there is a mama who thinks he's a good man. Behind every criminal, lazy ass, cheating ass, dishonest motherfucker, there is a mother who thinks her son is a good man. There's a lot of truth to that. And what happens is, because of technology, because of you can dress him up, make him look good, you know, he might even be able to educate him and have him get a good job. You know what I mean? Now he's driving a nice car and he's tall and handsome and, you know, dressed real nice and talking good and all this kind of shit. But if it wasn't raised right, he ain't going to be no strong man. He just looks like a strong man. Oh, yeah, girl, you know, he has a good job. He can provide for me. But if he is a weak man, he's too fucking selfish to provide for you. He's not going to sacrifice that Lexus or that BMW to make sure that the family has everything they need. He's not going to sacrifice his comfort or his own physical beauty. You know, I got to look good. I got to get the Jordans. I got to get, you know, he's not going to be able to make the sacrifices that a strong man needs to make in order to provide for his family and make sure his family has everything they need. He is not going to be able to deny his own lust in order to protect the heart of the woman that he has declared his love for. You see what I'm saying? And at some point, weak men are discovered. They are found out to be weak men. And there are three ways that weak men find out that they're weak. The first place is the enemy. The enemy meaning street violence or cops. Somehow, a weak man will have a wake-up call out on the street where he finds out that he is not a good man, that he is not a strong man. He finds out how weak he really is. That is a very, very painful wake-up call. And many weak men find out that way, right? They end up in prison. They end up shot by somebody else. They end up on drugs. Somehow, the enemy gives them that reality check. The second way that weak men find out they're weak is when mama stops taking care of him. And all of a sudden, he got to take care of himself. Now, he finds out, oh, fuck. I never learned. Well, he rarely takes the blame because he's got to blame somebody else. Rarely will a weak man said, well, damn, I never learned how to take care of myself. It's just that the world is just cruel. Everybody's treating me like shit. You know, why is everybody tripping? It must be because I'm black or blah, 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 blah. Motherfuckers say all kinds of shit. But it's when maybe mama died, right? Mama died or mama got a new man. And the new man said, no, that nigga too old for you to be paying his car note and shit. Make him get out there and do this on his own. Boy, you talk about wake-up call. Jody, time to be a man. You see what I'm saying? And mama is the second wake-up call. Because at some point, mama is going to tell the son, look, motherfucker, get out there and be a man. But mama didn't get to teach him how to be a man. She might have told him a couple times. But if she was really trying to balance work and mothering her kids, these boys grow up over-mothered and under-fathered. You know what I'm saying? It's the father that teaches, right? Mama raises them. Mama takes care of them. But if mama has to do daddy's job too, then part of mama's job doesn't get done and part of daddy's job doesn't get done. The third wake-up call. And all weak men eventually find out, and it's from the women. A weak man will end up failing a woman. All men will grow up, all young boys will grow up and one day want to be like his daddy. He's going to want the companionship of a woman. He's going to want to make love. He's going to want to, well, I don't know if he's going to want to have children or whatever, but he's going to be a man and he's going to have desires for the woman. And strong women will reject him. Why? Because that strong woman knows what a weak man has. Strong women will look a dude up and down and be like, this dude can't take care of me. He might look good, but he can't take care of me. The weak man is often the last one to find out he's weak. His mama don't know he's weak. He don't know he's weak. But a woman will tell him, motherfucker, you need to step your game up. You want to be with me. That is a very, very powerful. You know, they say that insults hurt, but don't nothing hurt like the fucking truth. When somebody tells you something about yourself and they tell you that they tell you the truth about something that's not pleasant, but you know it's true, that hurts even more. I would rather call me a punk, you know what I mean, to call me a bitch and tell me my mama ain't shit or my daddy ain't shit. I'd rather her do that than tell me I'm not man enough to take care of her and her family. Especially when I realize, well, shit, I'm not man enough to take care of her and her family. If a woman says to a man, you know what, since you think you're a man, I'm going to quit my job tomorrow. Have the rent money on the first, motherfucker. Right? Oh my God. What is that dude going to do? That's painful. Brothers don't like to hear that stuff. And that's why a lot of men, a lot of weak men, bounce from bed to bed. What they do is they stay with a woman long enough for the woman to find out he ain't shit. Then he moves on to the next woman so you don't have to hear that bullshit. You see what I'm saying? You all know, like I know, there are brothers who go from house to house, from woman to woman, to have a place to live. That woman telling him that you're not man enough for me, that is like one of the most that's one of the most painful things you can tell a brother besides, you know, your dick is small or some shit like that. You know what I'm saying? That is one of the most painful wake-up calls, is to be rejected by a woman, and rejected by a woman for a reason that you know is true. Okay, that being said, so what happens? The man may look at himself and realize, I'm not of the character that I can get me a good woman. He can find a woman. You don't find a weak woman. But brothers don't want weak women just like women don't want weak men, right? Really, really weak men will take a weak woman. But weak men with half a brain want a strong woman. Ain't no sense in both of us fucking starving, right? Ain't no sense in both of us being homeless. So usually weak men look for strong women. Strong women look for strong men. When a strong woman ends up with a weak man, it's only a matter of time before she puts that man out. And like I said, don't be fooled. Having a good job, having a nice car don't mean he's strong. Strong means he's honest. It means he's reliable. It means he's unselfish. He's giving. He's willing to share. He is resilient and tough enough to strive and to sacrifice to give the woman the environment, the incubated environment that she needs to raise her family, right? Strong man might have a good job, but he will force himself to live off of percentage of his job so that he can put away for her children, right? So he can provide for this woman. You see what I'm saying? Strong men are willing to take a second job and work at McDonald's just to make ends meet if he's not making a whole lot of money. Manhood is not measured in dollars and cents. Manhood is measured in character. And this is where I come to my point of all this, that natural selection, when you have a weak man having children, he will pass on those weak genes, whether you want to call it genes or whether you want to call it environment, nature versus nurture, right? His children are more likely to grow up weak because he is weak. He didn't provide the environment for that woman that she needed for those kids to be successful, okay? Even with a good job. It has nothing to do with money. It has to do with character. It has to do with what he's willing to do as a man for that woman. And that's that's what creates a strong man. And those are the men who keep a woman long enough to have 5, 6 children, if he wants 5 or 6 children. That is a strong man who is strong enough to create the environment that the woman needs to raise those strong children to become strong adults. And this is how a community elevates itself, by first raising strong men who will mix with strong women, who will have strong children, who will grow up to become strong adults. What has killed the black community lately has been weak men producing children. Weak men producing children result in women who struggle and children who grow up missing something, missing the leadership and the love and the protection of a father. It is girls who don't know how to choose a good man. It is boys who don't know how to become a good man. Do you understand? Weak men is how you end up with 60-year-old ladies who are starving because there was no man to provide for her when she got too old to work. You see what I'm saying? And this affects the entire community. And so that incubator that I talked about, we don't have them. We have a few of them, but we don't have enough of them. And so the next generation of black youth have to be strong. And it is the strong men who should be procreating. The weak men should be marginalized and pushed to the side until they become strong men. And maybe I'll make another video on that, how weak men can become strong men, because weak men do discover at some point. I know a brother right now that I mentor over the phone, who is a weak man, and he knows he's a weak man, and I get in his ass all the time. And when I go to my family reunion, I'll probably go link up with him and try to get him, in person, work on him. Each one teach one, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, I think I would do a video on that. But there are some men who realize that they do not have their lives together, and weak men can become strong men. Remember, like I said, this evolution is not so much a genetic evolution. It is a social and a mental, psychological evolution. And so even if you were raised and born into a weak environment, you can still be taught your strength and you can become strong. So anyway, we will talk about this in another video. All right, y'all have a good night.